Welcome to the Featured Anime Podcast. I'm your host, Jack. Unfortunately, Rick could not join us today, so I am flying solo again. This week's choice was mine, and it was Darling in the Franxx. Darling in the Franxx, personally, I feel was a really good anime. It had an opening, it had a closing, and it most certainly, towards the end, kind of got a little out of control, out of hand, but at least it gave me that closure I always so much crave. Arguably, Darling in the Franxx follows 6 main characters, but I'm going to focus in really on 2, Hiro and Zero Two. And I feel that these 2 are truly the main characters for the series because it revolves around their growth together as well as the trials they go through. It takes place in a post-apocalyptic world, and these children have to pilot robots to be able to defeat these beings or these monsters called Klaxosaurs. Now, the robots that are being controlled are of a female nature, so the women are straddling this machine, and they're younger, and the men are behind them, basically with the controls controlling them throughout the whole thing, or helping them control everything throughout the whole thing. And it really pushes on a symbiotic relationship that at this point in the post-apocalyptic future, there's this overarching order called F.A.P, and they're trying to make it so that everyone basically gives up their physical bodies and becomes a part of their collective, is what you find out towards the end, because there are an alien species that have been pushing everyone towards this one ultimate goal. Now, the ultimate goal for them is intergalactic domination. They want to rule everything, or at least that's what we're led to believe. They never go into their motives behind it all. You do learn that the Klaxosaurs are actually an ancient race, long since being on there, and that's what these mechs are actually based on. Now, the F.A.P have long been a part of humanity and wooing them from aging and helping them advance technologies and making it so that way they want to basically live forever, and they don't need to eat either. Although they can, it's not something they really need to do, and it's as a result of magma energy. And magma, as in magma, lava, is used as an energy source. It's also used to make people immortal, and that's what started the downfall, because they were drawing out the magma for the energy and to turn people into immortal, and immortal in the sense that they don't age, or they stop aging. They'll never die, but you can most certainly kill them. You take a gun, you shoot them in the head, they're dead. So it's not immortal in the sense of true immortality, but immortal in the sense that they never have to die from old age. And they are the ones that are at fault for the post-apocalyptic world because of the magma and them wanting to do this and draw on immortality. It was only available to basically the elitists, or people who had the money, who could afford the transfusion of cells to make it. And as a result of them becoming immortal, they no longer needed any way to reproduce, because they were never going to die. Now, there are some supporting characters in with it all, or in with them. So the other main characters are Ichigo, Goro, Kokoro, Miku, Mitsuru, Zorome, Ikuno, Futoshi. Those are all the other characters that are listed as a main character. And then you have a couple of supporting. Usually the children are actually referred to as a number because that is actually how they are portrayed. And the only reason why these particular individuals have a name is because they named themselves. More specifically, Hiro named a couple, and he encouraged everyone to think of names for each other. You have another couple supporting characters that really play a crucial role throughout the whole thing, and they are Hachi and Nana. And then the creator of these mechs and helping Ape and everyone move towards the apex of life, so to speak, was Dr. FranXX. And the mechs are actually all called FranXX. Now, when Zero and Hiro actually meet, Hiro meets Zero while she's swimming around, and she comments that he tastes good. And she is not actually human. Later on, you actually find out that she's more of a clone of the Kluxar's race than anything else, but it is truly a unique thing. Now, she has horns, and he's just infatuated with her. I'm pretty sure he's infatuated with her by the fact that she's swimming naked and then jumps out of the lake with a fish in her mouth, but Hiro is just absolutely infatuated with her, and he can't help but feel instantly drawn to her. Now, everyone else has their reservations about her because of her background, you could say. Now, her background is actually that fact that she can pilot one of these FranXX by herself. She actually doesn't need anyone. When she does have a partner, that's when they can actually unlock the full potential, but she doesn't. And it's also commented and shown that she's killed hundreds of co-pilots because they basically weren't worthy, and they die from her basically drawing and sucking out their life force. Because when they're actually in there piloting together, and this goes for any of the other robots, it's because they are making a connection mentally and spiritually, I guess you could say. And that's why they're able to control it. And it has to be that way because the robots have to be controlled by two people that are in unison, that get each other, that echo each other. And that's one of the unique perspectives about this anime. It's the fact that they have children who aren't allowed to be immortal. They're going to have to go through some... they have to maintain their reproductive organs because it's required and needed for them to be able to pilot the FranXX, the mechs. Now, the group that Hiro is a part of, with all the other characters that I had mentioned, they're considered a special group, a test group, more specifically for Dr. FranXX. And so they're given a little bit of a special treatment in that regard, so that they're given a wider range of emotions. They're not emotionally dead like a majority of the other ones. And that's because they are allowed to be that way. You learn that these kids go through indoctrination, and they basically, once they're given an order, they are immediately compelled through the indoctrination to follow through this order. And it's really shown when the overarching or the head figure for where all these people are, the ape, who's called Papa, with all the other immortal adults being called adults, is that once Papa gives this order, says you need to basically commit suicide, go kamikaze and blow up this thing to try and stop it, they're going to go do that, and they're not going to stop. They're going to be 100% compelled to do it. What's interesting is, based on the magma or the energy that is being used by the mechs, is that, interestingly enough, if you exert a lot of force or over time, your hair goes white. So you age as a result of this, from what I gather. Because you see one of the characters code 90, if I remember correctly, and he makes a comment about them. And then later on in the series, you see him again, but he has white hair and he's aged, and not much time has actually passed by. You learn that the predecessors for all of them actually end up dying. The whole group, the whole squad just basically dies because of this. And Zorome, he is infatuated with becoming an adult. Now, you learn that they will never be adults. They are never going to reach that apex, and it affects Zorome that way. You know, and he still holds out hope that he will be able to become an adult. But you can start to realize that everything that they've been taught, everything that they know and have learned, it's not quite right. And it really comes to bear its head when Kokoro finds a book in an abandoned village where they thought that, it must have been hard for them to live out here. It's funny that they had to do this and not have the wonderful comforts and joys of being in this world or in these giant arc domes that are called gardens, which are basically mobile fortresses for the immortal elites of the world and for these kids. Now, the children, I believe, are all clones, and in this future, the cloning is, I'm assuming, to be perfected, because there's no way they can, if with reproduction being killed or stopped, there's no way that they can have that level of children being produced to maintain basically a status quo without having some kind of method to be able to facilitate that. And so that's what I believe what they all are originally, is that they are all actually clones of the elitists, of those who actually are already alive and living in the dome. And I would even go as far as to say that the dome they are in, that is the dome where they are cloned from. The people in that dome, that's who they are cloned from. That's my own personal conjecture on that, though. Whether or not that's true is another story entirely. But it would be pretty interesting if they were cloned from the people that were in the dome that they were supposed to be protecting. Now, the earth, the soil they can't cultivate anything, and I glossed over this a little bit because of the magma energy. Now, in the domes where the children are staying, the soil was before the soil lost its ability to be fertile. And around, I want to say episode 20, you learn about the progression of the magma. You learn about the progression of civilization as a whole, and at what point everything comes to head, and how they got to the state they are in. You also learn about 17, 18 episodes. you learn that Hiro and Zero actually know each other from childhood. He had saw her right after she was cloned, and she was roughly his age. And she was infatuated with him because he's the person that taught him, or that he's the person that taught her, her name, and then darling. And so she calls him darling constantly throughout, but she never really truly is in love with him or cares about him, because she only cares about the kid. And she doesn't realize Hiro was that kid because of memory alteration. And she did everything she could to try and remember him. And so she always did everything she could to remember him, even when they tried erasing her memory time and time again. And they erased his memory of her time and time, or not time and time, but he did get his memory erased. And then when they're melding and they're becoming one with each other, and when she's losing her mind, she realizes after she attacks him that he is the person she has longed for, that she has been looking for. But there's also a side effect of them operating the FranXX together too. And that's he is becoming like her, Cloxosaur. And because he is unique in the sense, and he didn't die after riding with her for 3 times, that's why he started becoming one of them, is because he continued to ride with her. And instead of dying, he became more and more like her. And it really comes to head at the end when Hiro and Zero are going off into unknown space to fight the enemy at its core, who is actually Ape. Who was, you find out at the end, is Worm. And you find out the progression of society after everything's already been done. When all the battling and the fighting is moving on off world. And it's truly a moment where you see basically they have to come up from the ground and rebuild everything. And you learn about them, taking the soil and slowly incorporating it over time to help revitalize the earth. And it takes years. It takes years and years for it to become habitable again. Now, one of the things, and I've said a lot of great things about it, a lot of positive things, and at the end, Hiro and Zero are as they're reaching the end, it gets a little bit of hokey for me. I find it a little bit hokey that her body is in stone on Earth and her soul and mind separated from the body, which became part of the robot that Hiro is now controlling. And it's as of a result of fighting up in space and them going to the apes or Verm's home world, and they're able to destroy most of it, but not all of them, not the main guy, which leaves it kind of open, saying, hey, we'll, as long as there's life in this universe, and they say this, as long as there's life in this universe, we will continue to come back. We will always be here. You will never be able to get rid of us. But it also kills Hiro and Zero. And where her body was standing grows a sakura tree. And years and decades go by, and it becomes this really magnificent, huge sakura tree. And when they died, when Hiro and Sora died, they said that as long as their souls are intact, and they were after they died, and you saw them spinning off away into space, heading towards Earth, back home, and you saw their spirits heading back towards the Earth, that they will always be reunited with each other because they love each other. And you see at the very end a child that looks like Hiro, a child that looks like Zero meeting under the sakura tree. I think that was a good ending. I didn't really care for the space battle too much. It wasn't really my forte, but what I did care about, what I did like, was the ending. It gave it a nice ending. And they showed the people going through their struggles and not giving up and doing what they could to survive and move on. And all those children that were pilots and basically told they're going to die because they never had to pilot the FranXX again, aged like normal people, and they repopulated the Earth, and they were repopulating the Earth. And for all that it is, I feel that it was a pretty darn good show. Now, one of the negative things that I have to say about this is that the Earth is basically one giant desert because of the magma not being there. How are they able to breathe in that atmosphere that has had no plants or anything to speak of for decades? How is this able to happen? Now, I understand on the little arcs, they're able to figure it out, but they're not always in the arcs. They are out battling. And how are you able to have this? Now, they do show a small section that does have some plants in an abandoned city, but how? It's nowhere near enough for the amount of oxygen that would need to be able to sustain life on a planet. Let alone the island of Japan. The whole Japan. I mean, it's mind-boggling. And the space battle, I thought was a little hokey. I'm not gonna lie. I thought it was a little hokey. It could have been done better. It could have been done better. It could have been a little bit less cliched. And if I had to say anything, if I had to give any if I had to say compare it to anything at all, I would say I would compare it to Gurren Lagann. Gurren Lagann, the ending with the space battle, them going off into space and to fight the final boss or what have you, I would compare it to that. Because it and to me felt a little outlandish at the point to which they got to. So, how about I wrap things up now with a nice score? On a scale of 0 to 5, I would rate this. I'd rate it 4.2. I give it a 4.2. I can't go perfect because it did have some of the characters kind of forgettable. Some of the ideals behind it a little hard to grasp at. Like how they were able to pull up the magma and the point at which they had to be able to do that. It's a little far-fetched. Some of it's a little too far-fetched. And then the ending just kind of with the space battle just kind of lost me. I give it the animation, it's clean, it's nice, it's very vibrant. It has some a little bit of adult themes going on there, so it is not something that I would recommend to the kids to watch unless you want to talk about the birds and the bees, in the sense that they do talk about that, and then it touches a little bit on what life is like in general for them and in terms of puberty as well. So they kind of go through that. They never do state the ages of any of the children. That is not something they ever talk about at all. So their ages, how old they really are, is never really discussed, because one of the main characters, Mitsuru and Kokoro, towards the end, they decide, because she had found a book, that she wants a baby. And so they end up being intimate. They don't show anything. They end up being intimate. And through that one intimate night, she gets pregnant. And they talk about how giving birth is wrong and illegal and it shouldn't be done. And when something like this has happened before, they talk about, well, you usually have two choices. You either abort now or you abort later. It is basically what the choices were. So my score is 4.2. Because Rick's not here, he's not able to give me his choice for next week. We're going to go with Ramen Fighter Mickey. Hopefully he will be able to join us next week. It'll be interesting to watch this one. It is a 12 episode anime. It came out summer 2006 and the genres are action, comedy, parody, shonen. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I certainly enjoyed doing it. I know it's a little interesting having me do it solo, so please provide some feedback and let me know how I can improve for the days that I ride solo. Or if you have any recommendations about what we should watch next, if you've seen what we watched next, or if you want to share your thoughts on any of the past episodes, feel free to reach out to us at featuredanimepodcast@gmail.com. You can also reach out to us on the Twitterverse at Those Anime Guys. Until next time, I'm Jack. Later.